Hey, Goddess. Welcome to this episode where Angie K and I are talking about the concept of thank you next. And what I mean by that is people come into your life, and this could be romantic, business, friendship, whatever, right? It could be the gamut, but they come into your life and they want to do a project with you or an adventure with you, and they're all in. So you start the planning and then they can never do it. They can never do it. They can never do it. Or they tell you they're not ready, but will you wait for them to be ready? And we're going to talk about why that is not only detrimental to you, it's detrimental to them. And the longer you hold on to these people, the harder it is then to move on to the next person. And so that thank you next, which I think we talked about is an Ariana Grande song, right?
Yeah.
That thank you next is the concept of, okay, if you're not ready, then move aside because somebody else is. And so it's kind of, Angie and I are kind of really going to tune into our tough love, mother energy today and basically tell you, don't wait. No matter how much you care about these people, waiting is going to cause more heartache in the long run for you and for them. And so, these things don't have to end relationships, but know that when there's a project or a trip or a something that is going on and they just cannot show up for that, but they keep saying they want to do it, they want to do it, they want to do it. There comes a time that where you have to have the conversation where, look, you're not ready, and I'm going to move on to the next person. And if the relationship is strong enough, it'll survive that, right? Or they move on and you move on and everything's great. And you were saying too before we hit record, it's like the minute you let go of somebody who is not ready, that person who is a lot of times standing right behind them, and there they are ready to go and they will show up.
Yep.
So yeah, so let's get into this. And again, I want to make it very clear, this is not just romantic relationships. You were saying that you've done it a lot in your business relationships, right? Where you're like, well, no, you're not. If they don't share the same vision, right? If they don't
Mhm.
share the passion for the vision, then they're not going to be able to show up at the same level that you do. And so that's ultimately what we're always looking for. There goes my throat, right? Is someone to show up where we're at, not below.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so if you want to talk about maybe a little bit about just, generically kind of the business aspect of it, lead us into that because I think that's really important. I don't want people to get caught up in the romantic version of this, right? We want to talk about all the aspects of it.
Yeah. Y- I love this topic because I think this is huge in awakening. So many different ways people encounter this concept in awakening and energetically speaking, which is what you and I are always speaking the energy of things. What you're
Energy
saying is
bending.
when somebody's holding the space in your field for a certain energy, for a project, for whatever, and you're sort of holding them there and yet they're never quite ready. They're never quite ready. That space is filled with something. And so it's not until we
Right.
release and make that space available that the right aligned person can come in. And it's all about alignment. So what's interesting is and of course, I 100% believe in this too. There's divine soul connections out there. Think people that you have made soul spirits, excuse me, that you've made contracts with in your lifetime before you came. I mean, you can think of these as like your parents, your siblings, your important people, teachers that you've met along the way, friends, lovers, all kinds of people that you've made contracts with, before you came into this lifetime. And that is very important. And sometimes we encounter those people in the regular living world and they seem perfect. And a lot of times they are perfect in the sense that, yes, they have the qualities, or they can develop the qualities, or they share the vision that you're desiring. And this has happened to me a lot in every category: relationships,
Yes.
friendships, business. All of these divine soul connections show up in our lives, right? And and sometimes still it's like they can't quite get it together in this life. And we have to accept that at some point. Where it's like, even if you see, like, you meet this person, you see the whole vision for how it's going to play out. Maybe it's a whole business idea, a collaboration that you've had. The person drops in and you're like, oh my gosh, here you are. You're here finally. Awesome. I'm so excited to get started. You share the vision with them, tell them why they're perfect. Sometimes they catch it right away and they're saying, yeah, I see this. I've been wanting this too. Let's create it. And then that's a great opportunity. That's the yes, like, let's get going scenario, which can happen and it's awesome.
Hmm.
Yet sometimes you share it with them and the person, and I've had this especially in, like I've had it happen a lot in business during, my awakening process. And since I started a spiritual business, I'll have someone where I think, wow, this person is perfect. I'll have the whole vision downloaded to me. I'll explain it to them. And they're kind of like half in.
Hmm.
Okay. And for me, because it was so profound when I got the download, and some of you listening may have had this experience. So it was so profound that I didn't want to let it go. I didn't want to let them go, even though they're only sort of half in.
Right.
And so I would hold them in that energetic space and like wait for them to be ready. And this is where the thank you next comes in. Waiting for
Right.
people to be ready can just delay whatever it is that you know is your soul mission, what it is that you're here to do. And waiting for the perfect person, waiting for it to be ready. A lot of times you need to just get out there and become the perfect person. And then truly,
Hmm.
those that are ready are immediately ready. They see the vision. They don't need more time. They don't
Right.
need to think about it for 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 10 weeks, 2 years. They're just ready. They
They're
want to hit the ground running
magnetized. They're
with you right
magnetized to you.
away. So
Yeah.
that's the difference. And a lot of times, and I have fallen into this trap so many times, I can't even tell you, where I will be waiting for the person to really, the vision's just going to click in. If I just wait another 2 months, they're going to
Hmm.
see it. They're really going to see how we are the perfect business partners to do this, to bring this forward. They're just going to see. And it wasn't until especially in business, I really had some like heartbreaking stuff happen. And then I finally just like stepped away and I just said, I can't wait anymore. It's too heartbreaking. They really do not see, they don't see my value. They're just not seeing the vision that I see for this.
Right.
And yes, truly it could have been perfect, but they were not ready to see it. And I had to accept that. And if I would have done that so much sooner and just said, thank you
Right.
next, I could have moved forward so much faster. But what ended up happening, maybe I would say about 2 months went by where I was just a bit in a grief process around it because I really had to let go of a lot because I really had placed a lot of attachment on that being perfect.
Right.
2 months later, the perfect, most aligned business partnership drops in. Person's ready to go. They share the vision. They saw the vision and shared it with me. And I said, wait, that's my vision.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
cool. And then we were able to hit the ground running. So I want to share that because I think so many people fall into this trap, especially around the twin flame topic, things like that. I'm waiting for this person to be ready. And
Right.
at some
Yeah.
point, and sometimes people do surprise you and they are suddenly ready. But a lot of times that's after you step away, to be honest with you. After
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
disconnect from the idea that they need to be ready, sometimes they'll come back. But the important thing is, it's almost like that, what's that saying? Like if you love something, let it go. If it comes back to you,
Yeah.
it's for you, right?
And how old
So
is that?
sometimes
That's
that
so
it's for
old
like
too.
our parents were saying that to us, right? Like
Yes.
it was
Yeah.
like some, yeah, super old saying.
Hmm.
So I don't know, Wendy, I know you have a lot of stories around this. Like that my business story is
Yeah.
my one of my most recent ones that happened, but I know you have a lot too, and you've had the
Yes.
some of the romantic side of these
Sure.
things.
Well, and I
Yeah.
think too, just to piggyback on some of the things you were saying too, is that like we can, and maybe just saying them in a different way, because you already said a lot of it, but we can sometimes convince ourselves that they're more ready than they really are because we want it so badly, right? And so then we're
Hmm.
like, well, I don't understand what happened. You were all in. But then when we really think about it, it was us leaning toward them. And like you just said, what we really have to do is take a step back. Even when they come in and they're expressing that interest, I think it's important take a step back first and go, okay, are they aligned? Or am I just so excited to get this project going that I'm letting the first person in and they're not really ready? And so it's about really a kind of getting all the information that you need from this person before you start. Like I know I'm guilty of this. I know you are too. Before you start visualizing 5 years, 10 years down the road already with this person, right? Whether it's business or whatever. And you start visualizing and fantasizing about, oh, it's going to be so amazing. Get all the information and make sure they're aligned. And we have to make sure we're not the ones kind of pushing and forcing and telling ourselves, oh my gosh, they're perfect when maybe they're not. And so the
Yeah.
red flags I think are there, maybe close to the beginning, but we're like, oh well, that'll go away, or that's not a big deal. We justify it, right? Maybe not every time, but definitely for those times. Like, I mean, I definitely was in a, my most significant relationship since my divorce, that I walked away from early last year was definitely fit this bill, right? It's like I kept convincing myself that he was ready to go to move as fast as I was ready to move, right? I was all in. And so for 6 months, he definitely showed up and was showing me, my dog's dreaming, was showing me that he was ready. And then what happened is he just hit a wall. He just hit a wall. He couldn't go farther, but I tried to pull him through that wall, right? When really that was his work to do. And when I really think about it now that I'm more than a year, away from walking away from this, I can see it so much clearly. And I don't even really think about it that much anymore because I have integrated so much of this. But I can see it so much clearly now, and I see where he was actually telling me from the beginning he was only going to be able to go so far. There was no way that he was going, because instead of saying, I told myself, oh, he wants to grow with me, instead of actually listening to the words he was using, and what he was saying was, this is just who I am, this is what I do, I ruin relationships. And I was thinking, but then he'd say, but I don't feel that way yet with you. And I wasn't hearing the yet, and I wasn't hearing the actual words he was saying. And when I think about it, like, he was telling me from the beginning that he was not really aligned to go the distance. But ultimately, right, like, even relationships, like, I went out on one date with a
Hmm.
gentleman who I was really kind of excited about, but luckily I had my discernment on. And thankfully, after one date, he told me he wasn't ready to move on. He wasn't ready to go forward with a romantic relationship, but he was wanting to continue communication, and in a way that I wasn't comfortable with. And I was really proud of myself, and I think this last relationship was, taught me, gave me that discernment. And I said, you know what, I don't want to do that. And I told him, I said, look, I'm looking for my person. And if I'm hanging on, because he said, oh, maybe I will be ready. He did say those words. He said, oh, but I'm not ready yet. I might be ready soon. Well, can we keep communicating? And I was like, no, I don't like that idea because you're in the way of my
Yeah.
person, essentially. So I did say thank you next, and I was really proud of myself. And so then we went our separate ways. And so it was such a huge weight. In fact, the next like 2, 3 days after that, I was so proud of myself for saying it, because honestly, the me 2 years ago, maybe even 6 months ago, would have said, okay, sure, we can keep communicating, right? And I would just keep pining and longing for him to fill this position in my life that he already had told me he wasn't ready to fill. And I'm ready, and as far as I was concerned, I was ready to have it be filled, right? And so I might have done that, and a previous version of me, if I hadn't taken this big chunk of time to heal from that longer relationship where I realized you got to listen to their words right away.
Hmm.
And at my age, I'm sorry, but and I know I'm going to be, I'm not on the decline or anything, but in my 50s, it's like I'm not messing around anymore. I'm not going to be hanging on and waiting for anybody in any aspect of my life. So I was really proud of myself for saying what I did. And he actually even said, he said, that's a very mature thing to say. That's a very mature, perspective to have. And I was like, yeah, it is. And so I ran with that, and I was just flying on a high for the next 3 days, because I think that it's something that the old me never would have been able to do. And I was so aware of it that I was like, nope, I don't want you standing in the doorway and blocking my real person from coming in. So it was almost like I knew on many levels, if he wasn't ready, he wasn't it.
Yep.
So, and that was really refreshing. And of course, all of these, like you say, we both have had some heartbreaking ones, right? But they've all served a purpose. And they've all been for, we always say everything works for the light, right? They've all been for our growth and to teach us something and for our evolution so that next time we see it sooner, right? Like you were saying, oh, if I'd only seen things sooner. We see it sooner and sooner and sooner as long as we're aware of why it didn't work. And, we were talking too, I have a really good friend. We tried to create a business together
Mhm.
over and over and over again. And we really enjoyed each other's company and are great friends. But as far as building something business wise, nothing ever really stuck. And then we did end up going our separate ways very amicably, right? There was no falling
Mhm.
out or anything. And he's doing great and I'm really super happy for him. But it was so that was maybe kind of an example of we had this beautiful friendship and we
Mhm.
kind of thought, oh, maybe there's more for us to do together. But in a business respect, we weren't aligned. But in a friendship, we were. But we thought, oh,
Yeah.
we get along so well. We love each other's company. We're just, we can bounce things off each other. We thought we could build something. And it just, nothing ever was quite, nothing took off. And that's okay. I learned a lot.
Yeah.
He taught me how to build websites and he taught, right? Like in the process of all that, I learned so much of how to start my own stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the purpose that it served for me too.
I love what you're sharing because it is such a great example of how it happens in every part of our lives, not just one
Right.
area. I mean, I'm sure all of us can think of stories where we've had this happen in every way. And yeah, the quicker we can do it, the better. And that was awesome that you did it with that guy so fast.
Yeah.
The one thing I want to bring up in the spiritual community that does a little bit drive me nuts
Let's talk
is
about it.
I think that sometimes alignment is a not aligned, not aligned. The word, and this is true. Like there are things that are not aligned, but that can become a cop out for fear of commitment.
Oh,
And here's what
true.
I mean by that. It's like this is the way I view commitment. I don't view commitment as a promise. Promises are a different thing. A promise sometimes is too rigid and people cannot deliver on a promise, and that's why they fall apart on promises, right? Because
Right.
if you promise something very rigid, alignment comes in and a lot of things change suddenly. And suddenly it's like everything's different and you cannot actually deliver on that promise. But a commitment is different. Commitments are beautiful because commitment is saying, listen, I understand that the road can be messy. I don't know what is going to happen when we commit to this process. All kinds of things. Like you and I committed to the podcast, and in November, we both got really, really sick,
Hmm.
right? And then you lost your dad, right? Like we had a lot of things
So
going
much.
on.
Right.
And we just stayed committed the best as we could to our original vision. And that meant we took some weeks off. We just touched base with each other like, is this a good time to get started again or not? That's a commitment, right? A promise would be, I promise you, Wendy, I will podcast you every 2 weeks. I will never miss
Yeah.
one. You know, that can be too confining and those fall apart, I think. And so
And we
commitment is
never
a
did that
beautiful
with any
thing.
part of the podcast. We never made any kind of,
Exactly.
right.
Right. And commitment is a beautiful thing because it's like I will stick with you on this and we will work things out. That's to me what a commitment means. And now I feel like sometimes in the spiritual community, and it is a little upsetting to me that people decide that they have fear of commitment or they don't want to spend time committing to things because they want to be in the cop out of that's not aligned. They want to just take the exit
Mm,
door whenever they say that's not aligned. And that's not always true. There are things that are not aligned, and there are things that are just people reaching a level of visibility or some sort, they're up against some sort of fear or resistance, and they want to say things are not aligned, and they want to not
mhm.
stay committed to whatever it was. And I'm not saying stay committed to things longer than they make sense. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying I think that sometimes the spiritual community needs to check themselves and look at what are they actually doing? Are they actually afraid to take the commitment to the next level? Because sometimes we have to do that. We are all spiraling all the time, and that means we're going to higher and higher levels of whatever it is that's our life lessons, our life purpose, the things that we're here to do, the relationships that we're here to have with people. And sometimes that means we have to take a commitment up a notch. And sometimes it means we hit a checkpoint with people that is the parting of ways, right? And so it's just important to look at what is it really? Like, am I afraid of something? And so I don't want to take the relationship beyond this level. Like you and I, in our situation with our podcast, we could have said, oh gosh, we're both so sick right now. Maybe it's just not aligned. Like, we could just stop, right? But we
We're
just said,
tired and
no, let's
we're
just
right.
right. Let's wait it out, right? And a lot of times that these are commitment things that we have to make to ourselves too, like as business owners, like you have to keep showing up even when nothing's working, even when it seems like no one's hearing
Hmm.
you or your message isn't getting out there. Commitment is you keep showing up. You don't just suddenly say, well, I guess it's not aligned because people aren't hearing me.
Right.
Right? It's like pushing you, it's like you have to push through to the next day. Okay, the next day, the next day. And so
Hmm.
we could have said that, but then what we found was we sort of had to set back because of everything that was going on, but we came back and it felt juicier. So these things can happen where you hit a place in the spiral that's difficult, challenging, and you have to decide like, do you keep going or is that actually the time when you step away? And it's different for everyone, but it's always about looking at what are your reasons? Is there some sort of
Hmm.
fear? Or is there like a true, no, this really feels like the end of an era, whatever it is, right? And there are those, we
Right.
talk about letting go all the time, you and I on the podcast. So it's just, I think it's just important to think about why we're doing things. Are we just saying it's not aligned because of our own fear? And I think that
Hmm.
happened to me on sometimes with the India trip. As you know, Wendy, the Himalayas coming up, which by the way, everybody, the registration end date for that is April 6th. So if you've been sitting on the
Still
back burner
time.
on the Himalayas trip,
Hmm.
get in. Let's talk about it. So, so I had some people that were offered collaboration positions or just, friends that were invited to travel as part of the experience. And they had a like really hard time deciding to go or not. Right. And there were a lot of probably other factors that I don't know about going on in their life, of course.
Right.
I give everyone grace. But sometimes I think fear can step in, right? Like the perfect thing can be in front of you, and this is just an example. The perfect thing can be in front of you, and fear can step in, and we can say something's not aligned just because of fear, right?
Yep. True.
So some people can say, well, the money didn't appear for the trip. Okay, but had they committed, would that be a different story, right? The universe is always going to provide for you what you're committing to. So in the example of that, had someone actually committed by buying a flight or putting down a deposit or whatever, the universe will rise up and bring that to you. So you can't actually say, well, yeah, I said no, but actually the funds weren't available and so that is actually good that I said no. Now, that could be
Yeah.
true, but at the same time, I know the universe will rise up with the funds.
Hmm.
So sometimes I think we need to look at is it our own fear that's coming in, or is it really not aligned? And that's just another example, right?
Right.
We could go on and on. I could go on and on with these. They are all over the
Yeah.
place. But I really do think, and I see it happen all the time with people, opportunities present that are exactly what they're asking for even with my clients. Like I'll see this come up with my clients and they will talk themselves out of it because of their own fear of change. But they have asked for this change. They have asked for this thing. And so it's a matter of recognizing, wow, the thing is showing up that I asked for. It is right here in front of my face. Am I going to just see fear like, oh, hey, fear, and keep walking, right? Like we always have this choice. We
Hmm.
say, like, oh, we walk into the room. It's always going to be there when we're doing something new. Newsflash,
Right.
right? Like the
Yep.
fear, it's always going to be like, hey, here I am. So are you just going to walk by and be like, hey, I see you, but you can just stay over
You
there and
don't
take
run
the
the
back
show.
seat. You
Yep.
don't drive the car, right? Isn't that from one of Pam Grout's books, I think. Anyway,
Probably.
you don't get to drive the car, right? So it's like deciding like, is it really misalignment or is it really just fear of taking the action steps?
Right.
I observe these things in my clients all the time, and that's why I love what I do because I can say, listen, what is this really about? And we go into the Akashic records, we go into the deeper layers of the subconscious. And what is it really about? And really, like I had this great session the other day with a client, and she really wanted to put herself out there as a healer. Immediately, when I was in the records, I saw her doing sound healing. She's like, yes. She's like, I buried that deep inside myself because I felt that it was too expensive. She had told herself a story
Hmm.
about why she couldn't put that out there online. And we just kept going deeper into the layers of things. And really, her getting into her deepest fears was when she was 7 years old and she realized she was different than other people. she said, "Oh my gosh, I need to shut this down immediately because people are going to
Mm.
not accept me." And that's how deep we went down into the
Oh
layers. And then we
gosh,
were able
yeah.
to work with her 7-year-old. So these are just all things to like when you're presented with, a thank you next opportunity, or is it actually an aligned opportunity that we're just
Right.
thinking, right? But if you're having to wait for people, I mean, the whole point of what we're saying is ultimately, if you're having to wait for people and wait and wait and wait, just say thank you next.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because the next person then can come in because then this other person is not taking up space in the project, in the
Right.
energy, and
Yeah.
you're not, continuing to hold that space for them.
Because they can block the
So,
door,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
And
That
another,
was my TED Talk.
yes,
So,
thank you
thank you
all
for
for coming
coming.
to Angie's TED Talk. Q&A after. Um,
Yes.
one thing you said when you said you were talking about how you can be putting your message out there, putting your message out there, and nobody's listening. And sometimes that can be because your message needs to shift, right? Like you can blame other
Mhm.
people for being out of
Yep.
alignment, but what if it's you? And you were saying this goes along with too is not seeing where you need to grow, right? Like, oh,
Yep.
okay, well maybe I need to take a step back and look at where am I just shouting an old message out to the crowd that it's maybe they're already past it, and but we will blame them for not being ready for it, right, or whatever. Know that if you notice that several people have come in and you're doing the thank you next, the thank you next, the thank you next, maybe it's you. Maybe it's your message that needs to be upgraded. Maybe you need to take a step back and look at what you're delivering or where you're showing up, or how maybe you're avoiding healing something that is keeping that right person from coming in too, right? And so that could be another aspect of it. It's complicated, but it's not, right? Like alignment is alignment, but like you were saying, absolutely we can use it as a cop out. We can use it as an avoidant mechanism, like we do so many
Hmm.
beautiful things, right? But really, where are you needing to grow? Where are you needing to heal so that that aligned person comes in? And perhaps it's once you heal, is somebody who's already shown up and is just has noticed that you're not quite there yet. It could be your project and they come in and they're ready. And then they're like, well, the project is not really well defined. There's something going on there, and they can walk away, and then maybe that gives you the space to then get that clarity and really if and also if nobody's coming in, right? If you're like putting feelers out there for something and nobody's showing up, consider, I've had that happen where I wanted to do a master class and I put word out and crickets. And so I had to step back and look at, well, maybe this is not aligned with where people are right now, or maybe it's me. Maybe I need to shift the message a little bit. And then it ended up being a book. So we're all good. Everything's good. It ended up turning into the book instead. And so, yeah, I feel like that's another aspect of it. And it can show up in a lot of different ways, right? But perfect. And I think the takeaway should be what you said is like take a step back and look at, is it really not aligned? And where is the work for you to do here to make it to get into that alignment, but to be able to notice when someone is not right for what you're wanting them to come in for sooner and sooner and sooner is huge, because then you're keeping that doorway open for the right person. But the work never ends, right? We have to always be. So you're saying we can blame alignment, we can also blame other people for not being aligned, right? And when it's us.
Yep.
And it's always, there's always inner work to be done, right? It's never ending.
No, it's always growth. Like in our work, Wendy,
Hmm.
how many times have we run into people and I it's a beautiful thing to help people with the twin flame process,
Mm,
which is very much an internal process of inner union, right? And sometimes people will come in, and I even wrote about divine soul connections in my first book. You
right.
can grab that if you want to. It looks like this.
All
It's
the
called
links
Creation
are going to
Codes, Rise of the
be,
Goddess. Yeah, there's
yep,
a
all
whole
the links you
chapter
need.
on divine soul connections. And they can definitely be different experiences for different people. So, but the thing
Hmm.
is, with that, so many people when they experience the romantic side of those types of connections will, get stuck in this space of, and you can see them online and there's a lot of groups for these things, but they'll be stuck in the space of well, this person's just not ready, and I just need to wait for them to be ready, and then we'll move
Yeah.
forward with this. And so they'll wait and wait and wait and wait their
Put
life
everything on
away
hold.
when
Right.
they could be
Yeah.
doing so many beautiful things with their life. And, I've had clients like this, and we talk about all the beautiful things that they truly desire, but they will not move forward without that person, that relationship. But it's like, to me, it's
Right.
like you need to become your person, like become the person you're looking for. Become it.
Mm-hmm.
Go do it. Do the thing, do the vision alone if you have to for a while. And then everything will fill in because it's really about you. It's not actually about the other person. The twin flame experience is just a very intense mirror that's healing something inside you. It can be your inner
Right.
child, unresolved inner child things, whatever it is, right? It's a
Yeah.
mirror. It's just a super intense mirror.
And it
So,
breaks
and those
everything
relationships are
down.
beautiful. I'm like they come
Yeah.
in all different types of ways. I mean, some people have parent-child relationships that are like that, right? We just hear more about the romanticized ones because there's this a bit of
That
a fairy tale
intensity.
spin
Right.
on that whole
Yeah.
thing. So I
Yep.
just
It's
lumped
like
them into my
charm.
book as divine soul connections because they do come into our lives in many, many different ways that you can encounter different mentors, teachers on the spiritual path. These things can activate life force energy, and then that can be confused
Mm,
as romantic, but it's not
sure.
actually. So,
Sure.
so that's the thing is like, and then, we can be waiting for these people because we think that's the sign. But really, it's just a matter of the sign really is if you meet the person and they also want what you want and they are ready. That's the sign you need. They are
Right.
the person then. Other than that, that can just be, you can be experiencing an activation in life force energy and think, oh my gosh, that's my sign. But that can just be an activation. And that person actually isn't even experiencing it on their end. It can just be you experiencing it.
Right.
And then you telling them about, the vision or what you want to create with that person. And they're saying, no, actually, I don't feel that on my side. I don't want to create that. That's your sign. That's your thank you next. Thank you
Yep.
for the
They're
activation.
telling you. Yeah.
Next, right? Thank you.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying.
So
Listen to
that,
people's words,
mhm,
right? And a lot of times they
right.
might not even realize that what they're telling you is they're not aligned. They might really believe that, oh, but I don't want to let this go. I might be able to, to show up for what you need really soon, but I just can't right now. And they might get upset that you're not going to wait for them, right? And
Hmm.
that's their work too, right? But I wanted to say too, one
Hmm.
other thing is, there's alignment too, and then there's people can come in any relationship dynamic and help elevate the project or the relationship or whatever. And it may initially feel like, oh, well, they're not aligned, when really maybe they have something to offer that is going to help you raise that to the next level. And I think that in business, that's really easy to kind of visualize, right? Like say you have a passion project and you're wanting and you have it very well defined, right? And maybe you're very rigid about that definition and they're coming in and they're wanting you to expand a little bit and you're a little hesitant about it, right? That's why I'm saying
Hmm.
it's so important to step back and take a look from kind of an observer's standpoint at what you're doing and who they are, because they might be coming in with some information that is going to elevate it to the next level for both of you, and then that alignment is going to really click in because you might have some resistance to shifting what you've already built, right? Like, well, I've already built this is strict and whatever, and they're asking you to maybe bend those walls a little bit, and you don't want to because you worked so hard. And yeah, so this topic is such, I believe it's really potent right now in the energy too, because it's coming up for both you and I, and we're and a lot of retrospect too, like realizing how far we've come in that area. Like I said, with my, this recent experience where I saw it right away, thank goodness. And so the takeaway, hopefully, for you from this episode, for those of you watching and listening, is if you feel like you've hung on to people too long, just know that it's all divine timing, right? And it was all meant to teach you something. But awareness is everything. So now that you're aware that you don't have to hang on to somebody just because they keep saying, but I might be ready tomorrow. No, you can say thank you next. It does not have to be the end of the relationship, whatever that might be. But if it's just someone coming in to fulfill one certain role and they're not ready for it, then it sure can. You can say totally goodbye to them. because ultimately they're blocking the doorway from that aligned person to come in. And this is romantic, this is friendship, this is business. As long as you hold on and wait for somebody else to see the vision the way you see it, you're going to be blocking the door for the real person who may already see it, right? And is ready to go. They're trying to get in, but they can't because this person is blocking the doorway. So you have the power to say thank you next and clear that space. So yeah,
Yep.
are we
Yeah,
good?
it's
I
such a
think we're good.
powerful I think, yeah, I think we should wrap it there. I think my takeaway would be, I think my biggest thing that came out of what I was saying is thinking about what you're committing to and stop using it's not aligned as an excuse to not commit. I think that is something that really needs to happen in the spiritual community. And I wasn't even thinking of that when we
Absolutely.
started off on this topic, but it's just something I think that's been on my heart because I watch it happening. And I think people
Right.
are just deceiving themselves a lot of times by doing that. And they're missing out on all the goodies that could come from really sticking with things when you stick with
Sure.
things for a long time
Yeah.
and not being flighty and just, oh, I wasn't aligned and in and out. And,
Hmm.
you can't really build your dreams that way. That
No,
that
no,
isn't a build energy. So,
for
and
sure
of course,
wasn't.
everyone can do what they want to do. If that works for people, they can live like that. But it really doesn't. It doesn't usually allow things to come into full manifestation of what's possible for things. So
Agreed.
yeah, that is not what the exact topic was, but that's what came out, and I just think that's important to
That's a
note. But
good
yeah,
one. Yeah.
I think that, I wrote a post about the thank you next topic last week, and it was just me saying, like, when I really stopped waiting around for people was when my life got really good. And it was like a moment when I just decided, like, the things I want to do in my life, even if it feels like they would be more fun with another person or, like these business, even travel, like, even I went to India, but there's other trips I want to do that some people that don't align or they're not, the timing isn't right for people or whatever. And I still feel for me, it's like, just go,
Hmm.
and every time I've traveled overseas, I've been alone. I only went with you that one time. All my other trips were alone. And I met people that lived overseas and visited them sometimes for a while, but I was traveling alone. And so I think in my life, once I just realized like the things I want to do, I need to just get started and go. And whoever is going to join me along the way is going to join me. And that's just the best way to just get going without wasting time waiting for
Right.
people. I think that's
Right.
my takeaway is if you have something that you deeply desire to do, and maybe it is to have a certain type of relationship, and the person that you're waiting around for, maybe it is romantic, is not ready, not ready, not ready. Well, then thank you next, right?
Right.
Because you want that kind of relationship, and time is still going to keep clicking by. And so, like what you
Hmm.
did with that guy that you were dating was awesome. It was like, nope, you're not going to be able to be the one
Yeah.
that I want. So thank you next. Even though on paper this guy looked perfect, right? Like he was all it ticked every box.
Hmm.
But no, if they're not ready, that is like the number one. Forget it. Because how
Right.
could you ever control when someone's going to be ready? That
You
is like
can't,
so
right?
completely out of your control. I mean, not that
Absolutely.
anything's in your control at all, but really that is not anything that you could just be like, if somebody's given you some reason that you're like, oh, well, we can just fix that so easily. I can meet you
Right.
Tuesday night instead of Monday night. No, if somebody's not ready,
No.
there is not a thing you can do. And I think, yeah, I think that's my biggest takeaway is if you have people in your life right now or situations or whatever you're being held back from because someone is not ready, really seriously assess the situation. Are you just waiting around for this version of them that may or may not ever come along and putting your life on hold because of that? And just make your choice
Yeah.
from that place.
Yeah. I would say always remember that you are the star of your own life and don't ever
Hmm.
let yourself be the second fiddle, be the sidekick, be the best
Yep.
friend, right, in the movie. You're the lead role always. So
Yep.
yeah,
That is such a
absolutely. And
good point.
I
Yeah.
think that was an important point to come through because I do feel like probably 99% of the people who watch us are in the spiritual community. And I bet a lot of them are nodding their heads like, "Oh yeah, I've seen that," or maybe, "Oh yeah, I'm doing that." Right? So I
Yeah.
loved that that came through. So yeah, I feel like we covered it all. And I think we will end it here. We hope you join us for this episode. For every episode, go ahead and watch all of the episodes we have out already. I do believe this is episode 1 of season 3. So here we go.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so thank you so
Cool.
much for being here, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye, Goddess.
Bye, goddess.